Today, we're going to be editing a black and white American Bulldog. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and crop in. His posture is a little bit more aloof than I would typically go for, but it captures the dog's personality. I'm being a little tight in the frame here. And most photographers, when they do portraits, they try to leave a little bit more room in the frame because people typically look at their photos the way you would look at this on a desktop or they print them out, and you want the photo to have a little bit of room to breathe. However, these are basically thumbnail sized images that people are going to see on their phone. But even if they see them on the website, they're typically going to see them in that thumbnail format, not actually the full size image. This dog, his name is Face, and he's got a very cute face. And we're going to go ahead and move on. So here we are with the white balance. We're going to go ahead and grab that picker tool. We got plenty of white on the fur to look at, and I believe he was pretty clean. So we're going to go ahead and just select the spot right on his forehead, and that looks pretty good to me. We're going to go ahead and turn the saturation all the way up and see if we have any issues. So there is a slight green color cast here in the shadows. And then we're also seeing some pink on the belly. I think that's actually because of the shortness of this dog's fur, not because we have too much magenta in the photo. And then some green looks like it did creep in underneath the chin too, but we'll see how it presents itself later. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to let Lightroom do a little bit of the work here and press that auto button. And it did a fine job. Nothing crazy there. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. I'm going to hit that subject mask and mask out the dog perfectly. I'm going to go ahead and do this contrast curve. It's just a preset that I have. It does a medium contrast curve, 777s on texture, clarity, dehaze, and 17 on sharpness. And usually this curve will make the dog a little bit too contrasty, so I'll bring out the shadows, bring down the highlights. The difficulty of black and white dogs is you're trying to balance over and under exposure. So we have a little bit of on this dog. That's totally fine. The dog was truly black in the black part of the fur and truly white in the white parts of the fur. As you can see, we did the white balance that way. I think we're good on that balance there. I'm going to go ahead and raise the exposure a little bit because I think I can get away with it. I'm just going to have that. There we go. So a little bit of overexposure creeps in the white parts of the top of the head. That's perfectly fine with me. We can lose a small amount of detail there just to make sure that we have the white looking white and we have the black looking black. I am going to warm this dog up slightly. I know that kind of goes against keeping the colors true, but that adds a little bit of temperature separation from the background. And I'm actually going to tint the dog slightly magenta as well. I'm going to lower that temperature a little bit. That was a little too much. And so that's going to help clean up some of the green, but we did add too much magenta, maybe just a little bit there. There's your before, there's your after. Very subtle change, but it cleaned up a little bit of that green for us under the chin. And then it did add probably a little bit of yellow here in the cheek. And that just adds that feeling of warmth without the dog actually looking yellow if you don't look at this dog for more than 2 seconds. And what I'm going to do is fix everything as far as the colors go. Black and white, they are not colors. So we can go ahead and just desaturate the dog a bit, and that will help clean it up a little bit. So this is your before, this is your after. And so we see a lot of the problems go away, but we do still have that green presenting itself underneath that chin there that we'll have to deal with. To deal with that, we're going to grab this brush. I'm going to carefully just try to get those green bits there without grabbing too much extra. Doesn't need to be perfect if we do this right, but I'm going to do it wrong. So now with that mask selected, we're going to go ahead and grab the tint and we're going to tint up. So that's all the way. We don't want it all the way. We do actually need a fair amount of tint to get rid of that green. You could desaturate it a little bit too. I'm going to make sure we get that there. So you can see as I'm painting over where there's a lot of that green, it just goes away. I think that for me, that's going to do it. So we more or less got rid of a lot of that extra green that was distracting, and we didn't add any new distractions. If you really knew what you were looking for, you could see that's probably a little bit too purple. But if you didn't know, you wouldn't know. So we're going to ignore it. With that, we're going to add this in Photoshop, and we're going to go ahead and use this handy dandy remove tool. We're going to go Control plus, zoom in on the leash here. We're going to delete the first part of that leash. It did terribly. I'm going to delete the second half of the leash first, because the first part is crossing in front of the dog and that creates problems. And that also created some problems there. We're able to deal with that. All right, so I'm going to zoom in a bit more here on this last part of the leash. I'm going to use my left bracket to make this a little bit smaller and try to be a little bit more precise with the remove tool here. Make sure that Photoshop knows I just want to get rid of that, and it learned. There's a little bit of kind of color fringing going on there, but we can use our remove tool and that more or less got rid of it. Let's see how it looks further out. So further out, you really can't tell anything happened. So we're going to go ahead and take that for good. And there's really nothing else we need to do. This was on a hill, so that actually is an uneven horizon. I could fake it, but then the dog's stance looks awkward. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to leave that rotation. Not really a Photoshop issue, just something I noticed that I thought I should address. Here we are back in Lightroom, and I didn't do any eye adjustments. I feel like the eyes are actually well adjusted just from the adjustments we already made, so I'm not going to touch them, but I am going to go to the HSL. I'm going to take the hue of that green, going to bring it to yellow. That makes it a little bit less distracting than that green color. And then just to really make it even less distracting, I'm going to desaturate that background a little bit. Here's your before, that green vibrant background that kind of brings your attention to the photo. And here's the after now that's a little bit more muted, bringing your attention towards the dog. Last thing we're going to do, make the focus on the dog. We're going to add a vignette of -15. And so that kind of darkens up those corners, brings your focus inward. And so now you're focused on the dog. That allows us to raise the exposure a little bit too. And there we go, just barely overexposing parts of the white fur. It's exactly where we want to be. And that's the dog.